Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you so much for joining these sections at the World Fisheries Congress. We are in Seattle at the conference center, and this is a hybrid section for the Solving Sustainability Challenges at the Aquatic Food-Climate-Biodiversity Nexus. And thanks also so much for those who are joining online, including some of our panelists from around the world, as well as other people joining our sessions. So today we have a really exciting panel discussions. What we are going to do is that I will give a short introduction of the theme of this expert panel, and then after that we will have our speakers will have prepared videos for giving their perspective about the different dimensions of this theme, and then after that we have a panel of discussants. We joined together with some of the online panelists for discussions on a topic. And we will also involve the in-person as well as online participants in that discussion. So you're welcome to ask questions or express your view in that after the talks as well. So maybe let's do a quick chat. Is it clear for the online participants from here for things that I'm talking about? Is it okay? Okay, I don't see any. Jill, that's fine, right? Okay, that's good. Yeah, we have Jill and Duncan, who is helping us with monitoring and hosting the online sections remotely. So without further ado, let me first go to my slide first. So today, the chair, myself, I'm William Chung. I'm the director and professor at the Institute for the Oceans and Fisheries. And I'm joining with Professor Rashid Sumaila, who is also the co-chair of these sections. Rashid is a professor of economics at the same institute, Institute for the Oceans and Fisheries at UBC. Both of us are also co-directing a international partnership initiative solving the sustainability challenges at the Food, Climate, and Biodiversity Nexus, which is and that makes us to actually organize these themes to engage that discussions in this conference with all of you and with the participants in the conference as well. So before I start, I would like to make an acknowledgement that the University of British Columbia, where Rashid and I and many of our colleagues work and live, is located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. We thank them for offering their land for us to do our work and live there. We know that the natural and human system in the oceans are really interconnected. So when we talk about fisheries, we really cannot separate these different dimensions. On one hand,
William, can we take the list of people?
Oh, yes, I forgot about that. Thanks, Rashid.
Yeah.
So that's good. So on one side, the Earth systems is controlling our climate, and our human activity is also affecting the climate as well, with carbon dioxide coming into the atmosphere that leads to global warming and climate change. But the ocean is absorbing a lot of the heat and carbon dioxide, doing a big service for us in modeling our climate. But at the same time, the ocean is also getting warmer, losing oxygens, and also having problems of ocean acidifications, among other changes. And this affects the biodiversity and ecosystems in the oceans. Fish stocks and shellfish shifting their distributions, changing their abundance. The interactions between them are also changing, and that affects the human activities that are benefiting from the ocean's ecosystems that include food, livelihood, and culture. But at the same time, these human activities are also affecting ocean ecosystems through overexploitations, habitat changes, pollutions, among other changes that also affects the ocean's ability to moderate our climate. And that is the primary reasons why we have to tackle these different global challenges for security, climate change, and biodiversity conservation in a Nexus framework where we really account for the dynamic interactions of these different dimensions of global challenges. It also provides us with opportunities where we can find solution options that can address multiple global challenges. And those are the really good opportunities where we can get a lot of benefits that can benefit more dimensions, more people, and more biodiversity and ecosystems as well. And we are also trying to think more positively now. We know that the global ocean systems, biodiversity, fisheries are not doing really well, and that we really need to think about how we can bend the curve of the declines in nature so that we can really achieve something that we desire and that it is sustainable, equitable, and fair use of the ocean resources as well. And in doing so, I think this set the challenge for us. How can we find solution options that can address the challenge of food security, biodiversity, conservation, climate change, while achieving our desirable and sustainable futures? And that's set the basis for our partnerships. That is an international partnerships with partners and collaborators from around the world. And the partnership is funded by is primarily funded by the Social Science and Research Council of Canada, but then with support and in-kind and cash support from our partners, from other organizations that are joining our initiatives. The overarching objectives of this partnership is to develop visions of desirable futures of food, climate, and biodiversity, build Nexus-informed pathways that includes transformation and transition to desirable futures, as well as developing toolkits and methods that can help inform and use the generated knowledge to inform solution options to address these challenges together with the stakeholders, right holders, and knowledge holders. And we know that is a big challenge. So we take that as we are not attempting to solve the whole problems just by one single partnership. So we take a case studies approach where we try to bring up different aspects of these challenges as well as different solution options or opportunities, and then use it as a way to help us to tease out some of the cost-cutting lessons that can be applied to other areas as well. So in Canada, we want to focus on, we are collaborating with the Tla'amin Nations, which is one of the first coastal First Nations in British Columbia, really to look at the dimensions of how we can achieve food security for the nations, particularly through the reconciliations of their rights in utilizations of the oceans and resources. In China, aquaculture is really a big sectors in there. And so we want to look at that dimensions in trying to develop solutions options to feed the populations as well as address climate and biodiversity issues. In Ghana and Nigeria, it is really focusing on how to address both the illegal fishings, unreported fishings, as well as the intersections with climate change and sustainable livelihood. For Costa Rica, it is about land-sea interactions because we know that the ocean is not isolated. It is interconnected with other biomes, including land. So development on land, farming and other developments on land will affect the oceans, and how solution options can be developed that address these challenges of having the multiple connections of different biomes to the oceans. And then for the land, it is more about looking at the circular economy or nature-inclusive economy and how that can help to achieve a more sustainable and desirable and fair ocean futures. And today's in the panel, we have invited some of our principal investigators for the different case studies, as well as colleagues that really develop new and state-of-the-art methods that help us synthesize this case study to generate information and knowledge that can help inform other regions to look at these solution options for these Nexus issues. For the methods, we focus on developing positive future scenarios. So one of our panelists, we talk about a new kind of scenario framework called the Nature Future Framework, we are also using integrated modeling approaches that use quite a different types of modeling approach depending on the context. And then we also have a components that look at decision support tools, methods to really take the knowledge to then inform decisions. So without further ado, I would now pass it to the various speakers, panelists, to talk about their works within the partnerships. These are pre-recorded videos, and it will be operated by my colleagues, Duncan, who is joining us online. So Duncan, I'm stop sharing my screen, and you can start with the video. Thank you. So the first video is by Professor Laurie Chen. Laurie is a professor in the Department of Biology at the University of Ottawa. He is a Canadian research chair in toxicology and environmental health. Professor Chen's research interests are expansive, focusing on the toxicology of chemical contaminants found in the diet and environment, promoting environmental health for food security and sovereignty, particularly among Indigenous peoples.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this important panel to discuss this important subject. My name is Laurie Chen. I'm a professor and Canadian research chair in toxicology and environmental health at the University of Ottawa in Canada. The topic we want to talk about is about how the health of the oceans and affect the health of the foods and the health of the peoples. Of course, we know that we are what we eat, so our identity, our culture, our health are all somehow related to our food. The FAO results show that about 20% of the global populations derive about 1/5 of their animal protein from fish. So fish is very important to many people around the world. And more importantly, we know that about 1,900 coastal indigenous communities living in 87 countries around the world, or a total about 27 million people. Even though they consume 2% of the commercial catch, they rely heavily on seafood for their maintaining their diet and health. Why seafood is important to health? Of course, seafood also contains a lot of essential nutrients, for example, the omega-3 fatty acids, which is very important to the growth of our brain and also the health of our hearts. The other thing is that in many of the indigenous communities, they are facing a major diet transition problem. The problem is that the alternative food that they have instead of just fish are usually very poor quality and non-perishable, just like these bread and corn chips and things like that. So a switch from the traditional healthy seafoods to these non-perishable foods can cause a lot of chronic diseases as well. The health of the oceans, of course, is determined by many factors. One of them is global pollution and also local pollutions. So the release of chemicals in the oceans will affect the health of the fish and the quality of the food as well. The other threat, of course, is climate change. My colleague William Zhang has published this paper a few years ago, looking at the potential impacts of seafood harvest in coastal First Nations or indigenous communities in British Columbia. So he generally predicted a substantial decline of many of the important fish species along the BC coast. So based on these results, we started a project working with the coastal First Nations, looking at how the climate change will impact the seafood harvest in more details and related to the human nutrition and public health issues as well. So we started with looking at the calculating the impact of climate change from William's modeling results on the nutrient intake among these different First Nations. This graph on the top left panel shows that the different seafood, like sockeye salmon, halibut, Chinook salmon, herring, coho salmon, etc., contribute to high percentage of the nutrient requirement. For example, you can see that sockeye salmon contribute over 40% of the omega-3, EPA, and DHA intake, and also about over 40% of the vitamin B12 of the intake of the people as well. So when we use Williams model to predict the impact of percentage loss of seafood in their diet, you can see that there will be substantial loss in different projected scenario in things like omega-3 fatty acids and vitamin B12 and selenium as well. And then we use, based on this reduction in nutrient intake, we calculate what might be the potential increase in risk in the myocardial infections like heart failure or heart attack among First Nations in BC. So we found that if the decline of fish populations translate into the decline of food use or seafood consumption, we will see a 1 to 2% increase in heart attack risk, higher in males than females. But more importantly, in the age group higher than 50, of course, these are the age group that has the highest incidence of heart diseases. The increase in heart attack, failure rate increased by 5 to 6%. So this is a significant increase in the heart disease failure if the prediction of decline in fish harvest translate into a decline of fish use. So in general, in summary, we can see that a loss of traditional food system, like loss of seafood in the diet, because of changes in density or any other concerns in the environment or decrease in harvesting, will result in many direct and indirect health impact. For example, loss in cultural morality, loss in dietary quality and diversity, increase in sedentary life, and also loss in culture and specific food as well. That will result in becoming risk factors of many diseases like obesity, diabetes, alcoholism, heart diseases, anemia, tooth loss, infections, and even cancer. So the prevention of all these loss of traditional system is important. That's why we are working closely with them to try to develop adaptation strategy to protect the seafood system. We may have to remember that food is not just a linkage between the healthy oceans and healthy people. There's also a human rights issue as well. Having safe and healthy food is an important human rights issue. So this is something that we all need to strive on, and working in collaborations with the participating First Nations or the indigenous communities around the world to protect our ocean and protect the food systems and protect the health of the people. Thank you very much.
Yes, they are online, so
Yeah,
Lowy is online.
it's good.
Thank you very much, Lowy. So we will go through all the videos first, and then after that, we will have the discussions afterwards. So the next speaker is from our Costa Rica case study. Is by first of all, Dr. Taylor Clark. She is a postdoctoral researcher with Malviva in Costa Rica and the University of British Columbia. Her research focuses on the effects of climate change on marine ecosystems, particularly related to fisheries in tropical Eastern Pacific. During her PhD, she concentrated on how warming, her work concentrated on how warming and deoxygenation impact marine ecotherms in the region, in the Eastern Tropical Pacific region. And she extended her work to global coral reef futures as part of the Reef Futures projects for her postdoctoral fellows. She is now working on a project that focuses on transboundary marine protected areas in the Eastern Tropical Pacific under climate change. The co-authors of these presentations is Dr. Ingold Weinman. He is a professor at the School of Biology, the Research Center of Marine Science and Limnology, CIMA, at the University of Costa Rica. His core work interests include decapod crustaceans in marine and freshwater habitats, fishery biology, and the study of microplastic in aquatic organisms. His research also explores climate change impacts on marine resources in the Eastern Tropical Pacific, marine biodiversity, and the ecology of neotropical freshwater crabs. So please, Duncan, you can share the video.
Hello, thank you very much for your interest in our project, where we explore nature-based solutions on land and sea to reach desirable futures for small-scale fishing communities in the Gulf of Nicoya, which is a small, highly productive gulf in Costa Rica, Central America. We chose the Gulf of Nicoya as the site for the Costa Rican case study because it's the most important small-scale fishing ground in the country. In fact, it's the center of maritime culture in Costa Rica. The ocean has been a part of the coastal community's history, culture, and economy here for centuries. However, right now, this dependence on natural marine resources that are now degraded is causing communities to face challenges in the food, climate, biodiversity nexus. The story of small-scale fisheries in the Gulf of Nicoya is quite similar to that of small-scale fisheries all over the world. Over the past few decades, there has been a sequential depletion of fishery target resources. This boom and bust pattern started with sharks in the 1940s, then followed with sardines in the 1970s, and croakers and shrimp in the 1980s and 1990s. And while yes, overfishing has played a key role in this sequential depletion of target species, there are many other human stressors that are degrading marine fishery resources in the Gulf. The enclosed nature of this Gulf makes it susceptible to pollution from land-based activities like agriculture. Rivers carry fertilizers and pesticides from crops into the Gulf, leading to eutrophication and hypoxia. And fish just can't live where they can't breathe. On top of this, over the past decades, there has been lots of mangrove deforestation. This is important because mangroves are nursery areas to shrimp and croakers, two of the most important target species for small-scale fisheries in the region. And finally, climate change is coming in to exacerbate all current sustainability issues. Given this situation, we ask ourselves, how does land use and climate change affect coastal ecosystems and fisheries? And based on this information, what might be some nature-based solutions that we could co-develop with coastal fishing communities? Once that we have come up with this list of potential solutions, which ones might be the most effective and the most acceptable by local fishing communities? Although our case study focuses on a very small, localized region, there are cross-cutting themes that will allow us to connect the results from our case study to that of the overall project. In fact, Solving-FCB has done a great job at identifying those common themes that can draw connections and commonalities between the case study areas. The ones that we will be focusing on are land-sea interactions, food security, ecosystem-based solutions, and sustainable and equitable livelihoods. And here at the University of Costa Rica, we are beginning our work within the Solving-FCB project by building our team. You can notice that we are bringing in expertise from many different disciplines to tackle these very broad questions. We have researchers that focus on hydrological modeling, on the social sciences, both working with fishing communities and climate change, as well as nutrition and food security. And we also have researchers with expertise in fisheries, marine biodiversity, and climate change impacts. We look forward to bringing you some very interesting results the next time we present. And again, thank you very much for your interest in our project.
Thanks, Taylor and Ingo. Next, we have Temitope Sobanmu. She's a professor at the Zoology Department of the University of Lagos. She is an environmental toxicologist with a research focus on risk assessment and management of organic pollutants in various environmental media using classic and emerging ecotoxicology tools. Temi has passed and ongoing inter and multidisciplinary collaborations with researchers at the University of in Nigeria, Canada, UK, Germany, South Africa, Ghana, among others. Temito will talk about the Nigeria case studies that she's leading. Thank you. Thanks, Temi.
Good morning, everyone. Greetings. My name is Dr. Temitope Shogbamu. I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Lagos and a co-investigator for the West Africa case study of the Solving-FCB project led by the University of British Columbia. In this presentation, I'm going to be sharing some preliminary findings from the Nigeria subgroup of the West Africa case studies. In West Africa, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing costs about 1.3 billion annually to the sub-region. And IUU by trawlers alone cost about $50 million in Ghana and 70 million in Nigeria. And fisheries account for about 60% of the animal consumption in these countries. In terms of effects on biodiversity, fishing activities like using dynamites, landing of juveniles, using destructive fishing gears, pollution, all of these impact on the biodiversity in these coastal and marine ecosystems in these countries. And then because of the coastal nature of the countries, we have coastal populations that are vulnerable to climate change, particularly sea level rise and rising tidal waves, flooding, and making a combination of these stressors, essentially impacting adversely on the livelihoods and affecting the resilience of these vulnerable populations to climate change. IUU, as we know, refers to fishing activities that do not support management or conservation measures or to fisheries in question, and specifically in the Gulf of Guinea, they include fishing in inshore waters and economic exclusive zones that are illegal and unreported. And unregulated fishing involves activities by vessel owners who are not nationals or who are not flag-bearing part of the parties in the regional organizations that govern the fishing region. And they could also be fishing in areas or where there are no conservation or management resources in place. So in this project, our main aim is to examine whether and how resolving IUU fishing and plastic pollution in the Gulf of Guinea, specifically in Nigeria and Ghana, can enhance the resilience of marine ecosystem services for sustainable livelihoods under a changing climate. We have three specific objectives to look at the effect of IUU, climate change, and plastic pollution of fish stocks, effect on the use of destructive fishing methods on coastal and marine ecosystem services in two countries, and how does poverty and knowledge among artisanal fishers impact on the choice of climate adaptation strategies. Our methodologies involve primarily the use of secondary data and primary data collection using survey instruments and field experiments. And specifically, we're doing situational analysis, biophysical data collection, social demographic and economic analysis, as well as the use of quantitative methods, including ecological modeling, to design sustainable future scenarios in these regions for FCB. Our preliminary findings in the Nigerian case study shows that one MSc student has been recruited, just completed his program, and he focused on doing the situational analysis and stakeholders mapping, which will inform the inception meeting, the participatory stakeholders workshop on desirable future scenarios. Nigerian coastal cities, specifically Lagos, are one of the identified vulnerable hotspots to erosion and inundation due to climate change. And by 2050, it is estimated that 9.7 million Nigerians would need to relocate because of increasing rise in sea levels. Sea surface temperature is also a major factor affecting the country. Based on the IU Fishing Risks Index, Nigeria has a IU score of 2.40, which is marked by the coastal score of 3.1. And the higher the IU score, the more worse or adverse the situation is, requiring intervention. So the coastal score and the general score are actually high, 3.19 and 2.63 respectively. In terms of Nigeria's fishing sector, it is dominated by artisanal fishing, followed by industrial and then subsistence fishing. The number of discards of fisheries resources and landings are 50-50%. And while in terms of reporting, almost double the number of fisheries that are reported are actually not reported. So almost about times 2 of the portions that are reported are not reported according to records from the FARU database. And in terms of fishing gear, various fishing gears are used, dominated by traps, trawls, gill net, and the like. Plastic pollution, as we can see on slide 13, is a serious issue in Lagos, in Nigeria generally, which is approaching a population of around 220 million. The slide here shows plastic debris on the Lagos Lagoon. And various microplastic type, polymer types have been found in economic fishes sampled from this lagoon and other coastal waters across the country, which can basically impact on, contribute to fisheries decline, and also impact on the sustainability of fisheries and thereafter food resources or food security for the country and in the region. Also, in addition to plastic debris, associated pollutants, which the plastics serve as vector for, have been identified in the various environmental matrices in this region, and this also further adds to the pollution problem affecting the fisheries and the availability of fisheries resources for consumption sustainably. We've mapped the stakeholders for the 2 countries across fisheries sectors, NGOs, ministries, coastal ocean sectors, higher education sectors, and IU-related organizations. And this is how far we have gone within the project, and I'll stop here to take any questions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Tamito. And next, we will go from West Africa to China. We'll have Dr. Ling Chao, who is a professor at Xiamen University. Her work centers on sustainable aquaculture and fisheries management under global change, and more generally on sustainable assessment and marine ecological conservation and integrated management. And she will be talking about our China case study. Duncan, please.
Good morning, old friends and new friends. I'm Lin from Xiamen University. I'm the lead of the China case study under the FCB project. Our mission is to explore how aquaculture expansion can enhance seafood supply and carbon sequestration and protect coastal biodiversity. As a global leader in aquaculture, China is responsible for 2/3 of the world's production. Traditionally, Chinese fish farmers have grown fish in ponds, but terrestrial aquaculture growth is limited by land and freshwater scarcity. This has led to a shift to mariculture, which has seen a tenfold increase in output over the past 10 years, primarily due to seaweed and shellfish farming. Our focus is on seaweed farming, which has sparked interest in its potential for addressing environmental and food security challenges. Seaweed can act as carbon sink, absorb nutrients to mitigate eutrophication, and serve as fish habitats, contributing to biodiversity. However, its ecosystem service requires further research to validate its sustainability. China is the world's largest producer of seaweed, accounting for 57% of global production in 2019. Within this context, our China case study aims to elucidate the potential socio-economic and ecological consequence of seaweed aquaculture. The FCB project is a 6-year endeavor. We have just completed our first year work, and here are some key findings. Firstly, we estimated the global potential for seaweed farming, considering species distribution and economic viability. Australia and Indonesia top the list for suitable areas, but China leads the production. This leads to a paradox. Countries with the most suitable areas are not the top producers. This may be due to the various reasons, such as culture habitats and market leads, etc. To calculate the potential benefits of large-scale seaweed farming for humans, we then developed a global model based on species distribution modeling and parameters from aquaculture practitioners. We found that ecosystem benefits of seaweed farming vary by latitude, highlighting the need for localized strategies. This indicates that local conditions should be carefully considered to maximize environmental benefits in seaweed farming, rather than blindly imitating practices in other regions. Furthermore, we assessed the impact of climate change on seaweed production potential, revealing that low-latitude regions may face significant yield and economic loss due to climate change. High latitudes, however, could benefit. This suggests that economic and environmental benefits of large-scale seaweed farming in low latitudes are likely temporary and significantly influenced by climate change. To explore the impact of seaweed farming on biodiversity, we used environmental DNA monitoring techniques in 3 representative areas in Fujian province, known for their long history of seaweed farming. Our sampling was completed for the first year across 4 seasons, with data analysis still ongoing. We also conducted a drone survey to understand aquaculture spatial expansion patterns and gather insights from local fish farmers. Our preliminary results confirm that seaweed farms, when appropriately scaled and sited, may have a positive effect on biodiversity. However, further validation research is needed to verify the reliability of these results. Thank you for your attention. We welcome any comments or future collaborations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ling. Thanks for the presentation of the case study. And last but not least, We have Dr. Laura Pereira. She is an associate professor and chair position and holds the chair positions at the Global Change Institute at the University of Wits in Johannesburg, South Africa. She is actively involved in research and leadership within the field of sustainable development with a focus on global change. Her work focuses on sustainable transformations in developing country, context, and future thinking, especially related to the IPBES Nature Future Framework. She will be talking about one of our cost-cutting methods, which is an important component of all the case studies, is about using the Nature Future Framework for developing a desirable and sustainable futures for the oceans. Over to you, Laura. And Duncan, please play the video. Thanks.
Hi, good morning, afternoon. It's Laura Pereira here, an associate professor at the Global Change Institute at Wits University in Johannesburg, South Africa, and also a partner on the Solving-FCB project. And I'm really keen to be able to just share a few words or thoughts about how we are thinking of pulling the different case studies together into pathways for specific interventions to get onto a more sustainable, more just and equal trajectory for food, climate and biodiversity, both in the case studies and also more broadly. So I wanted to just initially start off with this idea of thinking through what the kinds of positive futures are for these different case studies is going to be different, and different people are going to have different ideas of what those more transformative endpoints could be for food, climate and biodiversity, and for sort of their livelihoods in general. And so it's important to just recognize that there are a plurality of different endpoints that we're looking for, and so also a plurality of different pathways that are going to get us from the current situation onto those more sustainable and equitable trajectories. And there are different ways of thinking through how we would overcome those the obstacles in our way. So I'm just showing here in the PowerPoint, just so that you had some visual cues for what I was saying, sort of different figures or different ways of depicting pathways towards more preferable futures. With this one here, you have sort of the iceberg model of the needing to flip different sort of powerful discourses or sort of paradigms that are really holding back some of the transformation that we need to enable. And then once you've done this, you're able to sort of open up for more diverse kind of preferable pathways into the future. You can also think through depicting these pathways through art or through different forms of communication. It doesn't only have to be scientific analysis. So that's also an aspect of thinking through pathways and thinking through desirable futures. That could be something that we think of employing within the project. This is an image from the Indigenous and Local Knowledge dialogue that was had through IPBES for the Scenarios and Models Task Force when we were discussing the Nature Futures Framework. And this is an image by Choti Tekam, who was asked to help present the discussions from the African region. This is another interesting image. It comes from the IPBES Transformative Change Assessment it comes from the IPBES Values Assessment. We're currently working on the Transformative Change Assessment, so I can't say anything about that one. But this is an image from the Values Assessment, and it sort of talks through or depicts how there are multiple different pathways and different interventions and options that are available in order to achieve more just and sustainable futures. And the real question for Solving-FCB is both what are those endpoints in these different case studies, and then what different options or interventions are available to sort of start to open up and get us along a better trajectory.
And here we have the Nature Futures Framework, or the NFF, which was developed by the IPBES Task Force on Scenario Models and is a flexible tool to support the development of scenarios and models of desirable futures for people, nature and Mother Earth. And it's going to be the tool that we use to tie all the different case studies together. So each of the case studies is going to be, hopefully, if it's relevant to them, using this as a way of unpacking what some of these more desirable futures could be, I'm not going to run through the specifics of the framework. I'm happy to talk through it later in the Q&A session, but in essence, it's about recognizing that there are diverse values for nature that are preferable and that we need to recognize all of these when we're designing these or envisioning these potential futures that are sustainable and just for food, climate, and biodiversity. And that is that there are intrinsic values for nature, relational values for nature where people and nature aren't even necessarily seen as different, and then the instrumental values for nature, such as food or climate regulation that we get from these key ecosystem services. On the right-hand side is just an explanation that there are many worldviews that can't delineate how they see the world along these clear lines, that it's a lot more interconnected and messy, and that underpinning these plurality or infinity of potential desirable endpoints is this interconnected understanding, for example, of Mother Earth or of nature's gifts or of living in harmony with nature.
As you can see, the idea really is about understanding that we're starting sort of now on the left-hand side in this moment where we know things need to change. We know we need to have transformative change. And it's about like what are the different options and sets of interventions that are available that open up these pathways towards much better, more preferable futures for people and nature that sort of meet food security needs, that address climate change concerns, both from mitigation and adaptation, but that also understand the core aspects of biodiversity and nature and sort of recognizes it for its worth. So that's my short intervention, and I look forward to continuing to have discussions with everyone on the panel.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks very much. And thanks again for all the panelists. Now I would like to invite the three of our discussants and to come and talk about some of the view about the presentations as well as in general about the topic. So first of all, I would like to invite the three discussants are all in person, so we got to also interact with them in person as well. But first of all, I would like to invite Dr. Dan Palomares to say a few words. Dan is Sierra's project manager and senior scientist at UBC's Institute for the Oceans and Fisheries. She has led the creations and development of sea life base, focusing on marine organisms other than fish. And Deng's research spans from the applications of theories in fish and fisheries biology to analysis of big data, contributing significantly to the fields of marine biodiversity and fisheries management. Deng, please, do you want to?
Okay. Is it working?
Do you want to come over? Yeah, you can
go there. Thanks.
Yes. Yeah.
Walk in the snow.
Walk in the snow. Yes. Good morning, everybody. I think when we were in the car with Rashid and William coming here in the snow on the road, I had like my take of all the talks that you have here, because it's multidisciplinary. My thing is to ask the question. So if we know that there are winners and losers, we know that some species or biodiversity is going to be impacted by the climate change. There will be a loss of biodiversity. We know that we have to prepare ourselves for that particular loss. But that loss of biodiversity, as Dr. Chan had said, was going to decrease the nutritional value of what is available to the fisheries and the coastal communities. The question I would like to ask to start a discussion on is how are we going to plan this out? Because, okay, we know that there's going to be biodiversity loss. Do we know what we are going to lose? Do we know if there are things or there are species that can replace what we are going to lose? And if this species can actually provide the nutritional content that is necessary for human consumption. And are we going to be able to prepare all the countries, especially the countries in the tropical areas in the global south, about this loss? Because I think, well, we know that these countries are going to be the most at risk of losing their biodiversity, and therefore losing that nutritional content of that biodiversity that's available to fisheries. So I would like to ask this question to everybody to start the discussion on trying to respond to it. Is that right?
Thank you.
So that might take on it.
Then you can sit in front of there. Maybe we'll have the panel there. Thanks. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Stefan Gatcher as a second discussant to give us his insight about the sections. Stefan is a professor at the Pontificia University of Catholic at Chile. His work focuses on marine biology, subtitle ecology, and the interplay between ecological and social systems in coastal zones. His work also dives into the conservation and sustainable management of marine resources and the analysis of public policies for natural resource management. Please, Stefan, thank you very much.
So good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. I had an introduction to the project. It's a very nice project. It's multiple countries, multiple disciplines. So I guess my first reflection that you asked me to make is, I think there's two levels here. One is about how we start managing and how do we actually make these projects useful, make these projects actionable. And there, I think there's a lot there. There's a lot there on how power is shared between countries when we have multi-country projects going on, how leadership is shared between countries, and also then how disciplines and power between disciplines is also motivated and shared at one scale. And then I guess at a different scale, that's one that interests me a lot, is we talk quite a lot about the need for transformations. And in these slides, there was something that wasn't highlighted, but they all started with little seeds. And I guess that one of the key things that I start thinking is we really have to start embracing. I include myself more into a bit of braver science, I would say, more proactive science, a science that can guide through these seeds, these transformation processes. We've been talking about transformations and we've got ideas about this for the last 15 years. I include myself, but we really need to make them work. This is just one reflection of my own. I think niche innovations, learning platforms, doing things different, thinking about this in a scalable way, being ahead of the game with some of this science. I think this project has an opportunity to do that, but it has to integrate these two things. There's two different things. The project in itself is a little bit of a learning platform as well, besides the learning platform around the Nexus. So those would be my first reflections. We really need some of these things to be brave in terms of the science we want to do. We were listening to the keynote this morning, and I was saying, look, it's all there. It's all there, but we really have to engage. And sometimes us as scientists, we know we're going to have to do foundations, work in other things, be uncomfortable in order to anticipate where we're going. We've been very reactive to crisis. We've been really good at reporting crises, but now we have to do that. And for that, just to finish with this, I guess that respecting other disciplines, having shared views between disciplines, being a little bit less utilitarian. There might be projects where you have to be utilitarian between disciplines or between humanities and sciences. But I would guess that real change will come and is coming from where we're not utilitarian. We're actually embracing each other. And that, the first slide, I think it was yours, was about building a team. Just putting people in a room is not building a team. Putting different disciplines in a room does not build a team. Time builds a team, struggle builds a team, sharing power builds a team. And I guess sometimes it's our projects, our time frames are not enough. We need a life to build a team. No, like slowly we build a team with Rashid. It's taken 20 years. No, since we started doing some of the things. No, first time we met. So those would be my initial reflections. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Stefan. And next, I will have my co-chair, Professor Wasish Mala, to say a few words before we engage with the broader audience and participants for discussions. Rashid, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks to everybody who has spoken. It's fantastic to see the team come together and talking about Stefan, we need more time. And so this is a Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council project of Canada, right? They call it Partnership Grants. And the goal is actually to give us more time than typical grants. So you can go up to 7 years, and they give you $2.5 million, which is significant for social sciences. And then they also insist that partners have to also contribute. So by the end of the day, we have doubled that budget, so to give us time. And training is a big part of this. Half of our budget usually goes to students and postdocs, thinking about the future, carrying whatever seeds we put here forward, And I like these partnership projects a lot because it allows for interdisciplinary work, as you have seen. It allows for cross-country work, as you have seen. It's just magical to put the team together. And this happens almost organically, right? We start with our groups and start thinking, then we link up to people around that we know in the field, and slowly you build a team. And it's hard work, it's struggle. I mean, this is our second partnership project. And the first one, we had to organize series of workshops just to get people to understand each other. We had a philosopher. Then we have ecological person. You have a crazy economist. And we're talking to each other, And the philosopher, she was amazing. You say something, Nancy will say it again and listen to yourself. and see whether you even agree with what you said. And when you think through it, right, you say, oh my gosh, maybe this is crazy, right? And so I like that, putting things together. And this is especially interesting because we have 5 case studies from all over 5 continents, and people are just learning from each other. For example, aquaculture, we have China. There's a lot to learn from China of what to do and what not to do, right? And we want to share this. And the Costa Rica team is working with the Ghana team, say, oh, my God, we see that in West Africa, gender studies are very strong, but they are not in Costa Rica. We got to learn from you. So there is all this sharing. And I see a lot of prospects with this kind of projects. And I will just shut up now and get to the discussion. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
So for I think we will open up the floor for any questions and views and sharing. And for online participants, if you want to get the floor to speak, you can either raise your hand, and we will, and Drew, who is also monitoring the online participations, will let us know that you want to speak as well. You can also put your questions or comments on the chat box. We will also try to read it out as well. Thanks. Yes, please. Thank you.
I'm Becca Selden, Wellesley College. I wanted to sort of touch on your, Stefan and Rashid's comments about, we have this big team that has this really diverse set of case studies, which makes it a little bit challenging to sort of make those comparisons of why did it work here, why didn't it work here, because they are so different. How would you approach that to make it actionable? I love the diversity of the things you're looking at, but that also seems like a challenge. So how are you all thinking about that?
Can you use the mic over there so that the online participants also hear? Yes.
Maybe we should give it to William too. Actually, Laura would be good at this. I think she's leading our integrative work, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so Laura, it's all right.
Laura, are you
there?
Are you there? Laura is in Europe, so
I'm not
okay.
actually, I'm back in South Africa.
Oh yeah, so I can
Ta-da!
able to check where you are. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I sort of I vaguely heard the question, but sort of around sort of integrating all of the different components, right? And I think that, yeah, I mean, this is an ongoing challenge, right? It's about staying true to case studies and sort of context-specific places, also staying true to the different disciplinary expertise that the team members have, but then also being able to draw broader conclusions from the work that we're doing. And so this is why, at least from the scenarios or the qualitative method side, we're going to try and use the Nature Futures framework kind of as this overarching heuristic that we can use in different ways in the different sort of contexts of the case studies with the different expertise that the different case study teams have, but still have some kind of a way of scaling or understanding a more integrated understanding of, or to get to a more integrated understanding of what the different outputs from each of the case studies are. And hopefully that will allow a more integrated conversation. But this is, I mean, as Rashid was saying, as has been mentioned, you know, these are ongoing experimental iterative processes. So we'll do it, we'll learn, we'll see if we're able to sort of reconfigure again. But yeah, that's my top level response to the question.
Thank you very much, Laura. I see Laurie also has his hands up. Maybe I will give it to Laurie and then go to Rashid. Laurie, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think the first panelist, I forgot her name, she also posed a very important question regarding, you know, how do we actually anticipate to use our results to support, to do knowledge translation, right? To support changes, which is all we are all committed to do. That comes back to, you know, what in the end is the need of the communities. And some of the governance issues that touch on. As we know that the changes in availability or the biodiversity in the ocean doesn't necessarily mean there's the same change on the plate or the table of the people. There are so many other factors involved as well. So how do we use our scientific findings or research tools that we develop to help the local governments or government at the national or international level to develop appropriate policy to make sure that regarding the changes in the harvest or in changes in availability, there's enough support for the local communities to maintain their well-being and health. I think that is a challenge that we all don't have an answer at this point. Some of the overall goal of our study is to gain the knowledge from each case studies and see whether we will learn enough from each case study to actually inform each other on the diversity of the problem and also the diversity of the potential solutions that we can actually offer to the policymakers to come up with some interventions policy. I think that will be the long-term challenge. Within ourselves, I think just how do we actually develop collaborative research to generate interdisciplinary results that is relevant to the policy, which are always in silos, right? You know, fish management, public health, they are all different people that we need to talk to with different language, different paradigm, etc. So I think the development in the research method, like as Laura mentioned, and also some of the integration of results that we propose to do, eventually may help to facilitate those dialogue.
Thanks, Laurie. Maybe I will point to Stefan also want to say something. I think Stefan also has lots of experience with engaging with the communities and knowledge users, so maybe he can also share his view as well.
Yeah, so just a small comment, just to put more problems on the table, really, from there. That comes from my experience. I am not part of this project, but what has to do with, to think, well, is that all these projects, systems, everything we do doesn't occur in a vacuum. No, there's time, there's things that have happened, there's policies that are different across nations, countries, etc. But on the other hand, also, communities are not homogeneous, and they've got different priorities, different perceptions, and I guess embracing that heterogeneity and avoiding trying to homogenize that in terms of what we feel is good is something very hard to do. But it's, I would say, this is my optimism, well full of contradictions, no, but this is my optimism to say that I think we see it more. We're acknowledging different value systems. We're acknowledging different ways of dealing with conflict in communities. I think, especially from us that come more from the environmental side, for a long time, we were very much, when we would say the community wants this, we were trying to homogenize it as much as possible just to make things easy for us. No, because of course they want this and it'll be good for their well-being and whatever. The world isn't like that. It's full of this complexity. I think embracing that things aren't so deterministic is one of the ways where we can actually draw cross-cutting lessons. And I think the world, as I say, but we're pushing in that direction a little bit, and it's nice to see research and things being published over and over at different levels, where we sort of start questioning a lot of what we thought was very deterministic. The role of social capital, no, see what social capital is going on, the leadership and whatever, and we're re-questioning some of these things in a more heterogeneous way, and I think that those are the things that can emerge from these type of projects.
No, I mean, I think we go.
Yes, let's see whether there are any questions from the floor.
No?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nobody will talk. I will talk.
William,
Yes.
Timothy has raised her hand.
Oh, Tammy, please go ahead.
Yeah, tell me.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, yes. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to jump on the comment by Stefan, I believe, the last speaker, and then the initial questions. I mean, about the heterogeneity of the different countries is very, very important. For instance, the challenges and the values for the coastal communities where we are working in Ghana and Nigeria is quite different from those, for instance, in Canada and the like. And I also wanted to correct the notion that the project is actually transdisciplinary. So we are actually also working with community stakeholders and some political stakeholders. We're not only all academics. And that's very, very important in designing these sustainable future scenarios that we're talking about. And that's why, for instance, as we saw in past my presentation, one of the first things that we're doing, beyond just the situational analysis from the academic side, is that we are hosting a participatory workshop, and it's the same across all the different regions to the best of my knowledge. And in those participatory workshops, we are actually bringing knowledge holders, so coastal communities. We are also bringing policy stakeholders, so people who actually have mandates around fisheries management, for instance. Ours is around IUU fishing and pollution and the like. And we are co-creating these challenges and these solutions alongside with them. Because at the end of the day, we're looking beyond the 5-year, 6-year span of this project to what can become sustainable, what can be owned, and what can be, there can be research offtake, as it were, by the communities. And so when we look at those specific challenges, I mean, those solutions will come from those context-specific challenges that are identified alongside with these different stakeholders that we're talking about. So all of this, together with the knowledge that we have from the academia side, and then with the, with the user community, let me put it that way, is going to inform the type of interventions that we're looking at, even within those communities. We have communities that are already suffering, from this impacts of climate change that we're looking at, we're studying. So we're looking at what type of resilience practices do they have. We are also looking at what type of alternative livelihoods can they look into, or can we support in order to help them to grow resilience to the continuing impacts of climate change, especially within our own parts of the world. So I just wanted to add that to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tammy.
Yeah, so I want to do something here. You started with heterogeneity, or the word is difficult for me actually. And then Tammy added to that. And I know you don't mean that. We shouldn't try to find common trends in communities. It's good. I like the idea of asking people, talking with people, looking at the differences. But at the same time, I don't want us to think that we want to give up on finding things that are common across society, because there are. We are all different, and we are all also the same. And I think that notion is something we need to hold on to, because how many communities do you want to go to in your lifetime, right? So there is the benefit of really, I think we are overdoing this generalization. And we should watch not to overdo it and say everything is different. No, we all eat, I tell economists, when I know that human beings are all the same? When you're at a conference like this, as soon as you finish, the most popular room, the rest room, everybody goes there. Doesn't matter who you are. So that we all do. So every society needs a place to do that. We cannot ignore that. So that I just want to push back a bit. This is what we're supposed to do, the scientists. All right. You wanted to go after one?
Hey, we like this.
We don't have time.
Ding?
I'd like to say something.
Yes, please.
I agree with you. And as a scientist, we need to find trends. And if the trends are common or different, that is something that we have to map out. And these studies will be able to help with that.
And I think
let's not make strawmans out of the two levels, but I would say that a lot of the things we try to do in terms of ocean sustainability, etc., that have been very hard to implement. A lot has been because we haven't acknowledged heterogeneity. So of course, we're not saying we can't. There has to be let's call them general principles. Yeah, all right, to get somewhere. But I guess that it's taken us a long time to sort of advance in different fishery management, different aquaculture systems, etc. So and a lot of this has to do with an issue we're not going to have time to, unfortunately, but norm internalization, compliance, and a lot of that has to do with individual human behavior, and a lot of that has to do with heterogeneity and attitudes, heterogeneity and values, etc. And of course, that is not to say that there aren't general principles, general trends that we can understand. Just to grab on what we're talking about, the project being also a project that embraces transdisciplinarity, at least as I understand it, different knowledge systems, co-production. I think that is the way to start embracing this heterogeneity in a more structured way. I really advocate for that. And just as it's probably the last thing I'm going to say is for William. And I think these projects, this just comes from the outside, but it's something that we've been hitting ourselves with quite a lot from the universities. I think these projects are really important to start putting transdisciplinarity, co-production as something that universities do. That is not outreach. It is not knowledge sharing. No, it is something that universities must do, and that academics have to be valued for, and that we need, again, basic principles in university of how this is assessed, basic principles of how communities are approached. And we have an opportunity here because we're all involved in academia, but to start positioning this within our universities as well. It's very often that we university presidents, however you call them, like start confusing, no? Knowledge co-production, the generation of learning platforms, niche innovation with, you're doing outreach, and it's so different. There's so much behind it. There's so much we have to really develop that I think that these projects, long-term, all universities, different countries, have opportunities to also reteach our research institutions of how we're thinking some of these things. That's me.
And yeah, I think that's really speak to it, like a important challenge that we need to overcome, which is the need for the institution to adapt. I think is not only university academia, but then governments, in other organizations, local communities that really need to see these kind of changes in institution in order to make these transdisciplinary works really effective and work. I see Loa's hand up. Lois, please go ahead.
William, Ingo's had his hand up for a while as well. So
Okay,
maybe...
sorry. Yes, please. Sorry. Thanks, Jill. So I will go to Ingo first. Ingo, please.
Yeah, Ingo Vietnam, University of Costa Rica. I would like to comment to Stefan, especially about the mention that bringing people together in a room doesn't make a team, and having people from different disciplines doesn't make a multidisciplinary study. I agree on that, but that's the first step. We have to talk to each other. And I think this project is an incredible opportunity to learn something from each other. And I see it in a different phase. The first phase may be a learning process within the group. For example, in our group, we have colleagues from food security, from geography, from modeling, from biodiversity, social science. And the first thing what we have to do is to find a common language, to understand what the other one is saying. And I think that's constant, and that's very, very important. And then the other step is on the general level, international level of the project, to bring our experience, not the knowledge, but our experience to the others and to learn from them. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be in a room with such people and to listen and to learn from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ingo. Loa, please go ahead.
Yeah, you also need to just say if it's time to start wrapping up. But I wanted to pick up on the point of being anticipatory rather than reactionary that Stefan brought up. And I think that that's kind of at the core of these governance challenges that we face, not just sort of from a marine perspective, but from a terrestrial perspective across sort of the food biodiversity nexus, across all of the nexuses, is really in facing these new complex challenges. How do we think through completely transformative ways of doing things differently, right? Of governance, of innovation, of even doing science in a way that, or doing research in a way that can incorporate multiple knowledge systems. And I think that this capacity to anticipate is an recognized capacity or skill that we really need to be building. And I think some of these participatory co-production methods are really good at being able to sort of bring diverse stakeholders, people, decision makers, knowledge systems together and actually kind of work through both this idea of anticipating where we don't want to go, but also trying to anticipate where we do want to go. And I really see Solving-FCB as being a really fantastic project, sort of at the cutting edge of that work.
Thank you, Loa. So I think it's really through these discussions, we highlight a really important point in some of the challenges, which is how to actually resolve the complexities of interfacing these change between different groups, different people, including academics, resource users, and administrators, policy makers. And so I think this is a really important point that we brought up. I'll go to, yes, please.
Just a quick question. I don't know enough about the project, but the question I always have is, is a common barrier in, you know, anything you try to do around the world is corruption. How do you deal with this? I mean, it breaks down governance, you know, legislation doesn't work, illegal fishing, whatever you want to call it, but I don't know how you deal with it. I don't know if you've included this in your variables, whatever you want to call it.
Yes, no, I think that's a really good question. And one of the things that I learned from working with colleagues from different parts of the world is that a lot of the time, these challenges, like, global challenges, food security, climate change, or biodiversity conservation, and other things, a lot of it is the real underlying drivers or solutions or opportunities to addressing this. Is not have the direct things about like overexploitations or maybe pollution, but then it is behind this whole social context that is driving all these some of these behaviors. Corruption is one thing, maybe also in some of the cases about inequities in the resource sharing or the policy and things like that. So I think that really is one of the common things that we talk about that I think would also link between the different case studies of how these different things emerge out in the different contexts and whether there are similar or differences approaches in addressing them. Maybe some of the other colleagues may have also additional thought on this as well.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, corruption, yeah, it's a big one. And I think when you said that, what it means is that we need to manage people and our institutions and our systems. It's not the fish. Fish are fine. We leave the fish alone, they know how to negotiate, right? Yeah, the whale and the sea and the salmon, they find the balance. It's we who go there. Corruption is just one element. There are many factors, you know, that play. So you give me the chance. I told you this is the second partnership project we have. Look here, I have something for you. This is a book. This is a book coming out on April 1. It's 15 chapters from all our partner Ocean Canada partnership, which was the first one. And I have a lot of this. You can pick one. You have pre-order 20% off. But actually, I like this book more than my last one because it's quite cheap. It's really cheap. I refuse to go to a commercial, for these commercial people that tell. So that is for you. And in there, some of the questions here, we try to grapple with them here. This was at the Canada level, and now we go global to expand our problems. But that's sea change, charting a sustainable future for oceans in Canada. And I thought I should pass that to you before you go.
Thanks. And with that, I want to thank all the panelists and the discussant here for this really fruitful exchange. Our partnership is just at this beginning stage. We are in just finished the second year, so it is a 6-year partnership. So hopefully next time when we convene another event, we have more progress in some of the addressing some of the issues that we raised, as well as following up on some of the discussions and suggestions that were made during these sessions. I want to thank the participants for your attendance of this event, as well as your contributions to these discussions. So thanks very much. And oh yes, please. Thank.
So is he going to be? I mean, the presentation of year 3 or so.
So Deng has the questions of where the presentations of year 3s. We haven't yet decided that yet, but please, we have a website, Solving-FCB.org. We will be posting our latest updates about the activities of our projects, as well as where the next event will be there. We also have our social media, so please also link it to us so that you can keep connected after the event. Thank you very much. Thanks.